Alrighty, so to understand VinylFS, and what that means and what it does and how it relates to Gulp, you have to understand this concept of object streams. So to do that, what I'm going to show you guys is I'm going to start this example off by showing you guys how we can make our own streams, our own readable, writable, and transform streams. We've already seen an example of a transform stream. And then I'm going to show you guys how to switch into object mode, because if you don't understand object mode, you might not necessarily quite understand VinylFS, and VinylFS is paramount to understanding Gulp. So basically, an object stream is a stream that, well, deals with objects instead of strings. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to create a new file, and it's going to be called object.js. And I'm going to import stream. I'm going to require in the entire stream module, though, because we're going to be using multiple things out of this. And let's just go ahead and really quickly build a... I'm going to go ahead and use strict up here. Let's go ahead and write some streams. Write some streams manually. So I'm going to create a source stream. And he's going to be a readable stream. So I'm going to say new stream.readable. Okay? And then I'm going to create a, well, let's fill them up with some data. Let's say source push whoa and source push bleh. So then I'm going to say source push null. So we have this readable stream, and we've dumped some data into it. We dumped in 2 pieces of text and then null. Null means that the stream is over. It's ended. Now let's create a destination. Or how about let's do our let's do our destination first. I'm going to say destination equals new stream.writable. And inside of stream.writable, I'm going to define the write method, which takes in, again, always use the function keyword here. It takes in a chunk, encoding, and a next, just like the transform stream does. And he's simply going to say console log writing, and then he's going to say chunk.toString. And then I'm going to invoke next. Again, next signals the system that I have more stuff to read. And if I wanted to go ahead and use this now, I could. I could say source.pipe dest. And if I run node object, notice how I say writing whoa, writing bleh, and then nothing, because the stream ended. I didn't have to finish the stream here. I could also have put the null terminator down here and pushed in more data if I wanted to. And notice how I now get more data printed out. So that's a really straightforward stream that uses strings. Let's go ahead and throw in a transform in here just to make things interesting. It's going to look exactly like what we had before. Well, not exactly, but it's going to have the same structure. And he's going to have a transform method. And he's going to have a function that takes in a chunk, encoding, and next. And he's simply going to say this.push. So remember, a transform has to push onto himself the data after he transformed the data. It's going to be this.push transform followed by chunk to string. And then we'll invoke next to signal the system that we want to do more or need more data. Okay, now when I say source.pipe.dest, instead now I'm going to say source.pipe transform.pipe.dest. So again, I'm saying source.pipe.transform. So transform is going to get all the data from source, and then dest is going to get all the data from transform. And now if I invoke this, notice how it says writing transform and then the actual data. So really, really straightforward stream example. But it's kind of boring, and it's not the way streams in Gulp work. Streams in Gulp use a thing called VinylFS. VinylFS is the sort of virtual file system, and it doesn't just push in streams of data. It actually pushes in objects. Objects that have metadata about the file, such as the file name or the directory that that file is located in. So how does that work with this? Right now we're just pushing in text. Well, the answer is object mode. Now, to be in object mode, we have to go ahead and make sure all of our streams are in object mode. So we'll start off with our source. We'll go ahead and set, well, before we do that, let's see what happens if I try to push non-string data in. Let's say I'm trying to push in a file data. So I'll do file is file1.text, length is 300, and let's keep it at that. Now, if I come and run this, I'll get an error. It says invalid non-string buffer chunk, because we're not in object mode. So let's change that. I'm going to go ahead and add an option to my readable stream and say object mode is true. And that's enough to make my readable stream in object mode, so I'll no longer get an error out on this, but I will get an error out on the transform and write. So let's go ahead and fix that as well. Coming down here, let's go ahead and make our writable in object mode. And then let's make our transform in object mode. So now all of our streams are in object mode. I'm going to go ahead and nuke these last two bits here and keep it all up here to kind of keep the example a little bit closer to being able to be on the same screen. Now when we run it, check this out. Writing transform whoa, writing transform bleh, but now I have writing transform object object. So now I can pass objects through. The idea here is that each one of these individual pushes is pushing a complete object in its entirety, and that complete object is going to go through every single step, and it's not going to get split up into chunks. So we don't have to worry about getting half of an object or something like that. We get the entire object passed through the entire stream. So for example, if I wanted to go ahead and push an object, let's say name is Nelson, and then I could do name is whoa. And if I came here, we'll still get object, object, and object, object. But if I can now change my my write stream to say writing chunk, instead of toString, I'll say writing chunk dot name. And then in my transform stream, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say chunk dot name. Well, we can go ahead and leave that blank here, and we'll see nothing because we're not pushing anything. If I just said on my transform this push chunk and didn't do any transform, notice how we see writing Nelson, writing whoa. But my transform, I can go ahead and say instead chunk dot name equals something like not chunk dot name. So now I'm modifying this property, and then I'm pushing it back onto the transform stream. And so now we see writing not Nelson and writing not whoa. So that is an object stream, and that is how Gulp receives your files. It receives them as objects, and all those different plugins get an opportunity to work on those objects. Now, there is an interesting thing to note, is that it kind of mixes between streaming objects and streaming files, because in Gulp there's actually two modes you can be in, but ultimately the Gulp stream itself is in a object mode. And the next video, we'll go ahead and take a look at Vinyl FS, and it'll be the last video before we start actually going back into Gulp. But hopefully, the next video is going to look a lot like Gulp. Once we get back to Gulp, hopefully a lot of the magic will be explained, so it's not so much magic. So we'll see you guys in the next video.